Thank you for joining. Almost towards the end of the day, and end of track session, I believe, and then we're gonna get into the plenary sessions. So great to have all of you here. Thank you so much. And this is my first time here in Budapest, in Europe, or probably my first conference in Europe as a speaker. So firstly, thank you so much to Sheila, to Tibor, and all the programming committee for giving me this opportunity. Originally planned to came here to give a workshop, but then I got this opportunity and I grabbed it. So hopefully I'll make most sense of it in 20 minutes, which I don't think is sufficient for me. But I'll try my best and make it as super fast as possible as I speak now, and I hope we could follow. So the title that I'm going to talk today is all about orchestrating continuous tests for automation testing. So the picture that I have has a meaning. I hope it makes sense to most of you because we all try, end of the day, to make sure the build that we're working on has to be green, right? If it's red, probably the only people called upon on the team is only QAs, right? I mean, that trend has to be changed. So yeah, welcome again. A little bit about me. As my friend Casper mentioned, I'm Manoj, and I work at Lambda Test as a developer relations, and I'm also an open source enthusiast. And as he mentioned, I've been contributing to Selenium over 10 years now. I've seen from versions Selenium 1.x to Selenium 4, and then Selenium 5 is coming up. So if you have any questions around Selenium, Appium, I'm also contributed to Appium, so please come and have a chat. And when I'm not speaking about UI automation, I speak about accessibility. I made a pause because that's how it meant to be talked, and DevOps. And then when I'm not doing any of these, I play with my kids, and I like bikes, and I play basketball. All right, let's jump into the session. So I wanted to make this more interactive. I know it's a little less time, but what does CD really means to you? When you hear the word CD, I'm sure most of you would have heard, what does it really mean? Can you expand? Anyone in the room? Come on, my time is running out. I want full cooperation. What does CD mean to you? I mean, the clue is already there. Yeah, please. Good. Of course. So he's gone to the Zen level of the meaning of CD, but yeah, that really matters. But so continuous delivery or continuous deployment. So these are the two different things. Usually, it means what is CD, right? So there is a difference between both of them. So when we hear about CD, people usually confuse between whether it's delivery or deployment. So there is a difference between them. Once I play a video, you'll actually be able to see. So there is a developer, happy developer, developing some code, and then there is some build. And then, of course, there is some sort of test happens. Whenever there is a manual intervention, before the change hits the production, it's called delivery. Whenever there is no manual intervention, that's when it's called deployment. So you see the change, right? That's where there is a thin line difference between what is continuous delivery and deployment. And what is more interesting here is, coming to the topic, continuous testing. That's what really matters, right? So continuous testing is everywhere. Continuous testing is not a separate process. It's part of everything. So think of like continuous testing is a uninterrupted way of testing, making sure every change that you make is being tested, right? With various different tools, and we will see in a few minutes. And all of this CD, delivery or deployment, it doesn't exist without CT, which is what we call as continuous testing. Developers talk about CI, CD, oh, we need to be CD ready. One fine day engineering manager comes and say, oh, are we doing CI? Are we doing CD? But what does it really mean? I mean, all of this can happen only if continuous testing in place, and that's what we're going to see about how do you orchestrate all of this so that you can have a successful continuous testing journey. So this happened. So I've been a consultant all my life, and in one fine day, I was speaking to one of my customers, and I asked them, do you do continuous testing? He said, yeah, I have my automation tests, and I run them every day. That was the answer. So is that really continuous testing? No, it is not, right? So continuous testing is not about continuously running your tests. It's about you being able to test at every stage, right? So this is one of the pictures from Dan Ashby, which has DevOps, and then it shows how testers can test at every stage, right from plan to deploy and then operate and then monitor, right? Testing can be done at every stage. But the thing is, as a QAs, we need to figure out and find out where exactly I can contribute. So if you're a QA or an automation engineer, whatever role you're playing, if your job is to, okay, I write my test cases and I execute it, done, I'm done with my job. Or if you're an automation tester, if you're finishing your test case, fingers crossed, Is it passing on CI? If your job is done? No, that's not the case, right? I'll tell you why. And what do we really mean? So if you ask me, Manoj, then what is really about continuous testing? I said it's not equal to automation. So is it all about automation? Continuous testing is not automation also. Then what is it really, right? So there is a difference, again, between automation test and continuous testing. So continuous testing is an overall process which will help you continually test your flow. But unlike automated testing is all about a process. It's like, I'm sure this is a good old definition that most of you would know here, so I'm not going to bore you enough with that. So I just wanted to put up here so that, let's step back and revisit. Like we have been hearing about automation, CI/CD all the time, but it's still good to go back and revisit all of this. And more than just the definition, there are a number of parameters. I'm just not going to go through all of this, but I think we can go further on the next ones that I wanted to show. So what is it really? As I said, continuous testing is not a process. It's really about a culture, right? It's about the mindset shift that we all have to work collaboratively, right? So what is it then? So these are some of the experiences that I've gained through all my life as a consultant. So what do you really need to do if you want to get continuous testing successfully? Get into a right delivery process. Whether you use Agile, whether you use DevOps methodology, doesn't matter. These are some of the basic things that you need to get started because it will help you remove some communication barrier because Agile is meant to be all about collaboration. But there are people who still do waterfall within Agile. I don't want to ask a show of hands and make you embarrassed, but let me figure that out myself a little later. And the next thing is the continuous integration setup. You really need some sort of continuous integration setup to get things going. And also, an automated environment setup because when you want it to be continuous testing ready, then you need to figure out a way to continually develop environments as well as test on that environment because that's what was more important. And last but not the least, I have to talk about know-hows of test execution. Right? That's what really important. Right? So we automate, and I've been giving a workshop on Tuesday, and one of them mentioned, I joined the team, they use this tool, and I'm just being part of the team and doing my job. I mean, if you're that guy, I think you should change because you need to really know what tests you're automating, and it's more importantly, you need to know when you should use that, right? And then finally, you either shift left or right. Doesn't matter to me, right? There's so many buzz happening in the industry. There's shift left, shift right. I'm doing that. I'm doing this. If you're doing that, great. But as a QA, what is that you're going to do? How are you helping your team to achieve continuous testing? And that's what really more important. So, well, it's so ambitious to hear. There are some challenges that industry have been facing that I've been hearing from a lot of customers and clients that I've consulted all my life. So let's look upon some of the challenges. First thing first, choosing the right tool. Don't be this guy, right? Pick a tool of your choice. Okay. Now you realize what the picture does, right? So don't burn your fingers. That's what I'm going to say. Don't pick an automation tool of a choice just because it works for your friend in another company. Just because it's been buzzed in the market, right? That is a huge difference. Something works for your colleague in a different project in the same company or your friend in a different company might not work for you. So always do the due diligence that it might need for you. Like test automation, picking the right tool is very, very important because it might work for you very well when you start, but when things scale, it might create a lot of problems, and you need to be aware of that. And test data management. Oh, this is another big problem. When you're in big team and you have a lot of teams, you have to coordinate. Test data management really gets problematic because you have to fight to get some data, or you have to have the freedom and the liberty to generate some mock data in that matter. And some people, most of them have not that. So if you wanted to do continuous testing, so make sure you are aware of this and you're making sure you're working for that. And the next one is lack of infrastructure. Sadly, or happily, let me try the other way. Let's not be sad, right? Will you agree if I say QA is not an afterthought anymore? Or no? Still, do you think QA is an afterthought process in most companies? No, right? I mean, people have moved on. That's great. But sadly, what I was trying to say is the infrastructure. So how many of you have a pleasure of having their own test environment for your testing? Not many of you. Quick show of hands. Yeah, if you're having, that's great. Because I've seen people who fight for getting, there usually be dev, staging, pre-prod, prod. Okay, give me, the feature is developed, a QA, give me staging environment for testing. No, I can't give you because I'm doing some sort of testing, the developer says. So we get a little time to test, and you know what happens rest of the story. I don't have to tell you, but sadly, lack of infrastructure is one of the key problems, and that is something that we need to solve if we want to have continuous testing. And increase systematic complexity, and this is very, very important, right? Because obviously, if you're in a greenfield project getting started, you know, pick a right tool of choice, test data, everything is steady, but then you will have problems when you scale, because you might have interdependencies. I mean, I'm sure you would have heard about microservices architecture, producer, consumer. While it's a boon, I think it also has a bane that people don't talk, collaborate. They say, I have a contract, shut your mouth, and do whatever the contract says. And they don't even share test data with them, or even not forget about test data, any data. So it's still a problem. I've seen this happens because the producer team sits down in Singapore and the consumer team sits down in Germany, in Berlin. So if you see, really, that's what is happening right now, right? So this communication and whenever the product has such a complexity and dependencies between number of services, I think that is something that you should take care. And when you automate or test that, and I think that's what you should look for. So what is it you're getting into? What are the dependencies? Where are the test data are coming from? What are the external influencing factors? So these are some of the things. And oh boy, how many of you had faced this? Bureaucratic approvals. I've seen, thank you. You are on my page, and I've seen that. So in one of my consulting gigs, I've seen people where, you know, people are waiting for PR to get approved for 20 days. Or forget about PRs. How many of you had a pleasure of choosing the tool of your choice? Or getting a device farm for you? Or getting a device infrastructure for you? You'll have to always wait on approvals for someone else. That's always a problematic. And then delivery pipeline. In order to have delivery pipeline, orchestrating your test is very, very important. And that's what's the way forward? Right? Enough about talking about challenges. Manoj, tell me what's the way forward. Well, let's revisit the same picture. The idea is to test at every stage. Then what is next? So this is one of the key slides that I wanted to take you as a key takeaway. Well, this is something that you should work out for yourself in your companies. So this is the golden source of truth or path to production, right from concept until deploy to disaster recovery. You can really see the test is happening at almost all the stages. So this is something that you should collaborate with your team and try to achieve a path to production. We have tried, this is from during my ThoughtWorks days when I was consulting with them. This is something that we formulated for one of the clients. But if you can use this as well, or you can try to use similar. I mean, one size doesn't fit all, right? It's not a cap. But I think this is something that should help. So how do we get there, right? The test strategy, continuous testing strategy is very, very important, right? And this is a good articulation of cartoonish by Han Go from Jess Humble's Continuous Delivery. So if you're looking for a book to learn more about continuous delivery, and particularly a testing part of it, I think that's a good book. Jess Humble, Continuous Delivery, so go and read that. So it talks the importance about business-facing tests versus technology-facing tests. Now, coming to orchestrating your automated tests, what are the things that you need to do? Well, first, ephemeral environments is a very, very important, because being able to let me put it this way. So ephemeral environments are otherwise called as short-lived environments or temporary environments or on-demand environments for your purposes. So you should be able to develop such sort of environments so that you could test. Like say, for example, Docker. If you're using Docker-based environments, that's one of the examples. Or maybe you're using Amazon EC2 instances for that matter. But you should be able to access that environments, and that's what really matters. And then distributed tests. And I think as we said, not all the tools are meant for scaling your tests. It might be good when you have 10 tests, 15 tests, but when you have, and I think during my workshop, someone said they had 1,400 tests. Yeah. So what will happen? So they had some scalable issues. So even I've been in part of Selenium team for over 10 years, and I've seen Selenium Grid 1, and I think hope most of you know about Selenium Grid. So if you don't know, Selenium Grid is a package which will help you distribute your tests. So the point is, even Selenium Grid had some problems. Now, we have observability in Selenium 4. That's how we have grown as a project. And I think that's the improvement, and that's the modern technology that you have to be aware of. And always look for a tool that will be able to distribute your tests. And then test data management, as I said, is one of the challenges, right? So look forward to have some sort of automated. There are a lot of packages in open source, GitHub, go and check it out. with test data generator. There's something called monkey data. I don't remember the name off the top of my mind, but I'm happy to chat up and find some names for you. So that's something that we can do. And the other thing that I also want to touch upon is when you do continuous testing, no one is barred by this, right? It's just like the COVID that we had. Almost everyone had to go to some sort of vaccinations that we did. So handling flaky tests is very, very important. What does it mean? A test that might pass today might fail tomorrow. Or it might pass in your local, it might fail in your remote execution. And that's what you wanted to check. So what do you actually do when flaky test happens? Are you this person? Try it again, rerun again. No. If your strategy is to rerun when you fail happen, no, that's not your strategy. Don't do that, right? Always deep dive, investigate what is the best way to figure out what the problem has been. Maybe when you're running it in a remote execution manner, some network resource might have spiked, that's why it have failed. So there are a number of things that happens because we are talking about presentation layer in the OSI network levels because there's lots of things happening at the presentation layer. And then fast feedback, we already spoke about it. So speaking of tools, there is a number of tools, right? So there is a number of tools available right from plan, build, operate, and deploy. So choose what really matters to you and what works for you. Do the due diligence, right? Now, when it comes to test infrastructure, because that's what we wanted to learn more, and I'm running short of time, I know, but one of the things that I want you to think about it is, I'm sure you've heard about infrastructure as a concept, right? Infrastructure as a code. So bring that into test, right? Build your test infrastructure as a code. So what do you need to do? Avoid manual tasks, which is prone to error. Ability to ability to rebuild when we need it. Or simplify deployment by handling configurations files. Like we have a number of things that we can do. And using tools like Terraform, Ansible, Chef, Puppet will really help you out. This is the Selenium grid architecture. I'm not covering this today. But how do you maintain it? Well, there's a number of things that you could do. What we can do, use Linux containers whenever possible, restart the nodes, scripts checking for dead processes. That's what I have next. So how many of you test your test framework? How many of you test your test infrastructure? I think that is very, very important. If you're not doing it, that you should do it. If you're doing it, that's great. This is one of the sample scripts that I've given, like waiting for grid to start. That is very important. And speaking of end-to-end testing, that's Selenium, that's where it is all about. And we speak about continuous testing, right? So I can really end here saying, hey, end-to-end testing is there. It's all about Selenium. We spoke about Selenium Grid. I'm asking you to test your infrastructure. We looked at most of the challenges and solutions and how do you overcome that. But now, it'll not be fair if I don't touch upon integration testing. So you take about test pyramid, there is unit, there is integration, right? So there is a wonderful tool called test containers. How many of you use that? No? Okay, cool. You should go. Okay, great. At least one. So you should go and check it out. It has it's the perfect example of ephemeral environments because it has inbuilt database environments, Selenium browsers, and anything else that can run as a Docker container, you can package it. So that will really help you do that. And we spoke about end-to-end testing. I think unit testing can also be done because it has JUnit. Like as I said, anything that is available in Docker or registry, you should be able to do that. And test containers is a wonderful way to do unit and integration testing on the fly. And last but not the least, so this is one of the products at Lambda Test. I'm not really talking about the product itself, but I just wanted to put up here. It's a build versus buy conversation that usually we have at work. So we have this tool which is called test orchestration, called HyperExecute. That's something that you could go try it out. So yeah, I want to summarize saying quality is, by Aristotle, as he says, quality is not an act, it's a habit. Right? So advocate for quality first mindset to achieve continuous quality. Without that, it's not possible. So don't be a QA who's waiting to finish your tests. Fingers crossed, it passed on my CI, my job is done. No, that's not your case. Work for it as a team, and continuous testing will be possible. And thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. My wife is always saying that I'm talking too fast, but you are absolutely a winner. Very good.
Yeah.
So
I have to make it because, if you're wondering, there were 44 slides. And I think I was there like 1 second to finish. So
yeah, actually,
I made it.
Yeah, very good, very good. Okay, so time for questions. There are already 2, but go to your Slido and you can ask further questions or vote the existing ones up. The first one, what are the biggest obstacles you have seen to implement continuous testing in a in a company or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I have to keep aside the technological challenges and speak more about practical challenges that you might face, as a consultant, I've seen having a need for QA is one of the biggest challenges. So people always think my devs can do the code. I mean, you claim test automation code is as equal as production code, and my devs can do that. I can do the JavaScript code, right? But why do you really need a QA? I think that is where the problem really starts. And if you are moving a role out of, of course, when you're progressing in a career, if you're moving away from QA to becoming a consultant, right? I think this is one of the biggest challenges that you will face on telling them what is the need for QA in the team and how do they gel within the team. Because one of the things that they fear more is what is the skill set that the QA can bring? Hey, I need SDET. That's great. But what does SDET can do? So you remember the slide that I showed you, which says, pick up the right tools of choice. So how many of you, let me ask this question back to you. So how many of you have went ahead and did Java-based Selenium or whatever language that you've done at previous workplace, at the new workplace? Any show of hands? Yeah. So what if that doesn't gel well with your whatever is happening in the, what doesn't happen to the project? So that's where people fear the most. So people think that, okay, we bring, I think the QAs that they have seen, I've seen in one of the clients where they've said, this is where the problem comes, where they feel like, okay, QAs bring in skill set what they're comfortable with. Like if the world is moving towards monorepos. I don't know how many of you know about monorepo setup. Well, in that case, it happens, it doesn't make sense. So the backend is on Node.js, people are moving to write an NPM software, and the front end is on Node.js, and it doesn't make sense to write a test in Java-based Selenium. Well, if it works, it works. But if you really need to have a collaborative way of working, if you need to have devs working with you, you need to really choose the tool and the language of choice collaboratively. It's an opportunity for you to learn a new language. And I'm sure whatever company you are, I think they will give an opportunity to learn that. I think, just to summarize, that's one of the key challenges that I've faced.
Thank you. Thank you. What was your biggest challenge and solution related to test data management?
Okay. So as I was saying, test data is always problematic, as I said. As a consultant coming from ThoughtWorks, the favorite answer that we have for any question is, it depends. So I'm going to say it depends, but I don't want to leave you with there. But it's multiple things, right? It depends on what sort of architecture are you in. So if you're still in good old age MVC architecture, or if you're based in event-driven architecture, or even evolutionary architecture for that matter, testing is very different in those aspects, right? And test data also really matters to that. So speaking of microservices environment, one of the things that we can get past by is introducing some sort of contract-based component testing, where you don't have to rely upon so much of data, but as long as you have some contract, it helps you. But again, if you see a bigger picture, the collaboration is the key. So as far as test data is concerned, for UI automation tests, you don't really need much. But where do you need test data? That's what I wanted you to think about. So is it really the product? So will your product work in a mock-based environment? How frequently are you changing your mock data? People might use tools like Mountbank. I don't know how many of you know about Mountbank. It is by one of my ex-talkers, Brandon Byers. So that is a wonderful tool for mocking. So that you can go check it out, those tools. I think those tools will really help you out.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we have one more question. Maybe it fits into the time. So that what is the best practice for handling batch failing flaky test? How to keep the confidence in test automation reports then? Okay.
I need half an hour.
1 minute for that.
Yeah, I know. I need half an hour for that. I know. It's a different topic for another day. But I think in short, as I said, rerunning, I think most of the frameworks or most of the companies having retry as one of the mechanism to combat flaky tests. But I don't think that's the best way. Reason being, it just overkills your resource utilization of whatever infrastructure you're running tests on. So rather, deep dive and see what is the root cause. I'm sure you will find out, maybe not once, twice, but you will definitely find out what is the reasons.